All right, we are going to conclude our series, our teaching series, because all of January was theological topics, angels, demonology, eschatology. You can find those things online. And then for the last month, we've been talking about specific topics, whether it be the Lord's Prayer, and then Dr. Nichols was here for a really fun time. And now we're going to talk about the Sermon on the Mount, okay? So as I thought about this and prayed about it and what exactly it is that I want to share with you about all of this, I thought that some geographic information would be helpful to you. So Jerusalem to the Sea of Galilee, so this is the upper third of Israel, is only 100 miles. And Springfield to St. Louis is 100 miles. So think about all of Jesus' ministry happening between here and St. Louis. That's where every miracle happened. That's where everywhere that'd be a long way to walk, but he walked it, right? So here's some fun facts. The Sea of Galilee is not a sea. It's a lake. And it's fed at the north by the Jordan River, and the Jordan River comes out the south end. It is the second lowest lake in the earth, in the world. It's 700 feet below sea level, which sounds like really amazing until you realize that the Dead Sea is 1,312 feet below, right? The lowest, hottest place in the world. And so the Sea of Galilee flows into, or the Jordan River flows into the north, flows out of the bottom. This reservoir of the Sea of Galilee is the primary fresh water source for the entire nation. They have some desalination plants where they take the Dead Sea, they take seawater, and they suck the salt out, and then they have fresh water. But Israel is primarily fed its fresh water by the Sea of Galilee. I remember one of the first times my wife and I went that our tour guide got upset with someone who was washing their car as we drove by. He goes, "Look at that guy." Because you're spraying fresh water and going down the sewer on your car. So much so that when you'll have like a window unit, air conditioner, and it drips, they save that water and they use that on their plants or whatever. So it's a really big deal. It's also known as the Sea of Tiberias, and its dimensions. This is kind of interesting. It's 13 miles long by 8 miles wide. Which, when you stop and think about it, if you stand on a flat surface, or the curvature of the earth, for the length of 13 miles, it was a little bit of complicated math, but I found an algorithm to do it. So at 13 miles, the curvature of the earth drops 112.7 feet. So if I'm standing and I'm looking 13 miles, the length of the Sea of Galilee, and all things being equal, the Sea of Galilee would taper off by 112 feet. You understand what I'm saying? So I wouldn't be able to see the entire length of the Sea of Galilee because of this taper. However, with the facts I've just given you, which is the Sea of Galilee is 700 feet below sea level, and if you stand on the Mount of the Beatitudes, where we're talking about now, you would more than be able to see the length of the entire lake. So I have a few maps for you. The first is, I think the first couple are there on your notes. This is the nation of Israel, and this is the state of Illinois superimposed over the top of it, so you can get an idea of just how small Israel is. Isn't that interesting? And so the world demands that they give up more of their land for the Palestinians. When in fact, Iraq, Iran, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, all Muslim countries. Why don't they chisel out a little bit of land right here for the Palestinians? I mean, my goodness. Anyways, I get a little political there for a second, but we're back to show you in perspective the size of Israel to Illinois. Second map, you're going to see, this will help you remember it's 13 by 8. So I got 13 and 8 here. The Sea of Galilee the Jordan comes in there, comes out here. Those of you that have traveled with me and been water baptized, you got water baptized in the Jordan right here. There's an ancient boat that was discovered at the lake. It's kept here. Mary of Mary Magdalene, that's her home. You see, this is where the multiplication of the fish and loaves happened. Over here you have Capernaum, or Capernaum, if you want to pronounce it correctly. Capernaum, and you have the multiplication, the miracle of the fish and loaves here. And then here, you have the Mount of the Beatitudes. So you can see, well, Nazareth is down here. Nazareth, he couldn't do any miracles there because of their unbelief. So he says, okay, I'm going to go find a hometown of ministry. And where he went for his hometown of ministry was Capernaum. That's where it all began. That's where he hung out. That's where a lot of miracles happened, as in the feeding of the 5,000 and the Mount of the Beatitudes, where everything happened. So that kind of gives you, this is called the Gadarene over here. This is where the pigs jumped into the sea. Just a bunch of fun stuff. Okay, enough of all that. But that gives you, and you have there in front of you, next map. So we're going to look at, this is Capernaum. So don't think Springfield, don't think Decatur, don't even think Cantrell, don't think Buffalo, think something smaller. That's the town, right here. That's the whole town. This is the remnants of the homes. This is the synagogue that Jesus preached in Capernaum. You can go and stand there. You say, what in the world is that Star Wars thing right there? Well, that wasn't there just 20 years ago, the first time I went, because in the 1960s, they discovered Peter's house. They discovered Peter's house, like the real deal, and they built a modern-day church over it. There's pylons that come out of the ground, and everything is suspended above the archaeological dig. You can walk into this church, the floor is glass, and you can see Peter's house. Super cool, right? So that's the whole city. And you park your bus over there, and you walk in here, and just an amazing place to be. Okay, so you see the Sea of Galilee here. This is Capernaum, but we're talking about the Mount of the Beatitudes. So let's look at the next slide. This is the mountain. This is the monastery on the Mount of Beatitudes. This is a natural amphitheater. It's believed that as many as 5,000 people could sit in there and one person speak and they can be heard because of the way that it's naturally curved. All right? So you have the multiplication of fish and loaves right down in this area, just a couple miles. You can see it. And then down off the picture over here is the place I just showed you, which is Capernaum. That's how close it all is around the north end of the Sea of Galilee. All right? And with our elevation here, we can clearly see, on a clear day, you can see the end. You can see the end of the Sea of Galilee in the width. All right, I think we've got a couple more, or at least one more. Okay, so this is a view from like the back porch of the monastery for the feeding of the 5,000 and the Mount of the Beatitudes. Okay? Is there anything else, or is that the last one? That's the last one? Yes? All right, good. Interesting. Those things are interesting. All right, so we're going to talk about the Sermon on the Mount today. It's found in Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7. If you did not get a text from me, that means you're not on the church, what do we ever call that thing, where I can text you, because some of you have already pre-read the Sermon on the Mount to be prepared for today. So if you don't get that text, pull one of those cards out in front of you, fill that out, and let us know, and we'll get you like a weekly text, all right? So it's the Holy Trinity of chapters, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. The Old Testament, this is like a math question. The Old Testament is to Mount Sinai as the New Testament is to the Mount of Beatitudes. And this is what I mean. In the Old Testament, on Mount Sinai, what happened there? The law was given on Mount Sinai, which is in Egypt. This is where Moses received the Ten Commandments. In Exodus chapter 19, on the third month after the Israelites left Egypt, on that very day they came to the desert in Sinai. After they set out for Rephidim, they entered into the desert of Sinai. And Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. And it goes on that he went up. Verse number 3 says, he went up to the mountain and he received the Ten Commandments. The law, that's what happened at Mount Sinai. Then a little bit later, what's interesting is in Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse number 5, it says, the Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your own brothers. You must listen to him. This is a foreshadow of Jesus, of the prophet to come, who's going to give you what? The New Testament, the new covenant, when he goes up to the mountain. This is the same context. So he went up to the mountain. That phrase happens only 3 times in the entire Old Testament. And every time that phrase, and he went up to the mountain, It's referring to Moses going up to the mountain to receive the Ten Commandments. Exodus 19:3, which I just read to you, chapter 24, verse 18, and chapter 34, verse 4. So I find it really interesting that if you have your Bible and you look at Matthew chapter 5, where this whole thing begins, the very first sentence says, and he went up to the mountain. It's not by accident Matthew writes that. He went up to the mount to deliver this. The New Testament is, if you will, the law of the New Testament. It's a treatise, a fulfillment of the law. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, 17 verses into it, he says, hey, just so you know, don't think that I've come here to abolish the law or the prophets. I'm not doing away with it. I have not come to abolish them, but to do what? Fulfill them. And when something's done, it's done. You turn the page. And so what we have in these 3 chapters are some very interesting topics, and I would encourage you to study a lot of this out yourself. I cannot do the whole thing today. But we're talking about judging others, the wise and the foolish builder, ask, seek, and knock, whether or not you should worry, whether you should store up for yourself treasures in heaven, the ins and outs of fasting, giving to the poor, talking about adultery, divorce, murder. We even get the Lord's Prayer in the middle of this, and how we should love our enemies. That's a lot of business. That's a lot of business. Let me turn there. You know, the thing about the Sermon on the Mount, and particularly how it all starts out very sing-songy, with all the Beatitudes and everything, you know. I don't know if you've ever seen like a really cheesy Christian movie of all this, but generally there's like flutes playing and violins playing, and Jesus very sedately is saying, blessed are the poor in spirit. But you know, I have a little bit more of a vivid imagination than that. I don't think it should be flutes and just very somber, very sedate type of instrumentation. If there would be any type of music that would be selected to really bring gravitas to this whole thing, it would be 2001: A Space Odyssey. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, they'll be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, they'll see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. I mean, don't you think? That's what I think. He is turning the page. He's saying, I fulfilled it. I did it. Now we've got something else. I'm on top of the mountain. He is the prophet that was to come. He is the fulfiller of the old and the bringer of the new. He says, there's some, Luke says, and he went up to the mountain, and this is what he began to say. Thou shalt not, no, blessed are you. And if you were here before service started, we had Pharrell's happy song. Because blessed means happy. And at the bottom of that, there were all the subtitles of blessed are the meek, blessed are the poor in spirit. This is what he brought. He brought a party, he brought a celebration. It's actually the world's most radical message ever. It's the world's most radical message ever spoken, ever. Right from wrong, moral and ethical standards that move way beyond what the 10 Commandments were, which was a list of don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, obey the Sabbath, blah, 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 blah. Instead, what he lays out is something that will test you beyond your words and actions. Because if it's just words and actions, we all can put on a good show. Because you can put lipstick on a pig. What he gets down to is what? Your thoughts. your motives, why it is what you do, and above all, your heart's condition. So your choice to follow Jesus is your choice to become his apprentice. It's always been, always will be a hard issue. Jesus is amplifying, not doing away with. He's amplifying the 10 Commandments. You ready? The issue of the heart is the heart of the issue. The issue of the heart is the heart of the issue. The Sermon on the Mount is so great because it gives me a tool of self-evaluation of the obedient apprentice's life. It covers our thoughts and our words and deeds, but our thoughts, our motives. So to get down to the nitty-gritty issue of life, we have this set before us. Whether or not we are walking in obedience to the Master, which is, let me just make your life a little easier as a Christian. All you have to do is find out what God is involved in, what God is up to, and then go join yourself to that. I don't have to search for his will. I search for him. I see what he's doing, and I say, oh, that's what you're doing? Okay, wait a second. You don't have it yet. What does this Sermon on the Mount do for us? It lays out for us the terms of apprenticeship with the master. So let's say you want to be an apprentice under someone who really knows what they're doing, right? The master builder, whatever. So you want to be an apprentice carpenter or whatever. So you go to the job site, and the master is busy putting together the stud walls. We're going to put those up. We're going to begin building the house because the foundation is there. Now we're going to start building some walls. And you arrive on the job site, and the master is building. You are not going to go and start doing plumbing. What are you going to do? You're going to step right up next to the master. What are we doing today? I see you're doing this. And you're just going to throw in helping him do what he's up to. We're the apprentice. Stop trying to be the master, right? Just find out what he's up to and then go join up with that. All right. My life's verse, my call into ministry is found in Matthew chapter 11. Come unto me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am gentle. And that phrase, learn of me, was what propelled me to go to seminary. That studying to be like him and do what he did has everything to do with being yoked with him. I have a couple photos, so in case you're unfamiliar with the agrarian lifestyle, the first is just a regular yoke if you don't know what it looks like, and here it is attached to a couple ox or cows. They stick their head in there, then they shove that little U up there, and they pin that, and they put them together. So what I want you to understand about this verse that says, take my yoke, is the idea that everyone in life has a yoke. You will carry a burden. You will have something to carry in life. Jesus says, however, if you choose to take mine, it's easy and it's light. Wow. That means what you try to do without being yoked to Jesus, it's going to be tough. It's not easy. And it's not light. I want easy and light. Isn't that what they try to sell us on TV and infomercials? I want easy. But wait, there's more. Matthew 11, here it is, verse 29 and 30. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am gentle. Have you ever worked can you imagine being an apprentice working for a boss that just berates you all day long? You stupid, don't. No. This master is gentle. He's a teacher. He's humble in heart. And you'll find rest for your soul. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Now, if you don't do what the Lord has commanded you to do, there's the alternative, and I found it for you in Deuteronomy 28, 47 and following. Because you did not serve the Lord your God joyfully. Oh, wait a second. I had to do it with a joyful heart? So it wasn't just about what I did. I had to do it with the right attitude. Now share that cookie with your sister. All right. No. No, do it right. I'm talking Old Testament, joyful. You didn't do it joyfully. Because you did not serve the Lord your God joyfully and gladly in the time of prosperity. Therefore, now that you're hungry and thirsty, naked and dire in poverty, you will serve the enemies of your Lord that he sends to you, and your enemies will put an iron yoke on your neck until he has destroyed you. I feel America is in danger of having an iron yoke put on her neck. So the Sermon on the Mount, it enunciates the core values of our apprenticeship, of kingdom issues. It's the litmus test to accurately measure our spiritual development and ministry impact. So back to the Sermon on the Mount. After we have the Beatitudes, he goes right into these 6 examples of what the law said and now what I'm going to say about it. And they're found in Matthew 5, all of them, verse 22, 28, 32, 34, 39, 44. Get the tape and you'll figure out what I just said. Or you can just read it, and do as I have done and just highlight every time he says, but I tell you. So he's not doing away with when he says, you shall not, you've heard it said, don't commit murder. I'm not doing away with that. I'm going to make it even harder. I tell you that if you are angry in your heart towards your brother, you already committed murder against him. You've heard it said, don't commit adultery. But I tell you, if you look at one with lust in your heart, you've already committed. See what we're doing? We're drilling down to the heart issue. It's not just your behavior, it's your terrible attitude. Because these Jews knew the Pharisees. They knew the Sadducees. They knew they all washed their hands the right way and walked the right way and went to temple and synagogue. They did all the outward sign, but inside they were full of dead men's bones. They were wretched. They were stinky on the inside. And some of y'all come to church and you smell real good, but when you go home on Tuesday or Friday or Saturday, you go, man, I don't like who I am on the inside, what's going on inside of me, between my ears and in my heart. And that's why Jesus came to set you free. Jesus died on the cross for all that icky stuff you got going on inside of you. He loves you. He doesn't want you to be in that. He loves you so much that he brought this because you could continue to keep the outward form of holiness, yet lack the power. He couldn't leave you just keeping the form. So he brought this. But I tell you, time after time, for murder, adultery, oaths, let your yes be yes, let your no be no. He says eye for an eye. You've heard that, eye for an eye. We're going to go get them, man. They slashed my tires. I'm going to slash their tires. That's Old Testament. That's Old Testament. Jesus says, forgive them. That's what he said. On down the line, loving your enemies, divorce, and so on. So my point is this, is what comes right after the Beatitudes. Right after all those happy things. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. The year is 1898. So we're after the Civil War. We're before the turn of the century. 1898. Put yourself there. That's when Thomas Edison patented the first light bulb. 1879. 1879. It's when he patented the first light bulb. Before that, there were no light bulbs. What? Yeah, there were no light bulbs. Fast forward about 20 years to the year 1903. That's when Albert Einstein patented the invention of the refrigerator. Up until then, we were packing stuff in salt trying to preserve it, or if we were blessed enough to have ice, well, not if you lived below the Mason-Dixon line. When are you ever going to have ice? Never, unless it was 2 weeks ago in Houston, right? It really snowed bad there. So how did we light up a room? How did we preserve things prior to 1879, and 1903. I'm going to show you. Salt. Who likes beef jerky? What is it? It's just salted meat. Smoked, dried. That was it. Salt was so important to the economy, not just in Jesus' time, but all the way up until we had the refrigerator in 1903. A little over 100 years ago. Salt. That guy comes to work and the boss fires him and he says, that guy's not worth his. Because salt was the way you used to pay people even. That's how valuable it was. That's where that phrase comes from. Salt's important. Couldn't survive without it. Light. This is a first century oil lamp. I don't know if you can see it or not. Don't want to dump the oil out. There's a hole. You fill this with oil. Then you put a cotton string down this hole, and it sits in this little base down here, and it sucks up the oil. You can see that I got olive oil on my fingers now from touching this. And then it sucks up to this little cotton wick. These date back to 2500 BC. Because up until then, there's no light. There was no light, no way to sustain light unless you had a fire. Well, let's take the fire from point A to point B. All right, let's shape something out of earth, pour a little oil in it, stick a wick in it. You know the menorah? The menorah in the tabernacle and the menorah in the temple, all the way up until the second temple, we said the menorah. What do we say the menorah is? We say it's a lamp stand. Don't think candles. Think of one in the middle and 6 on each side, a 7-stemmed candlestick, but it's a lampstand. And the top of that was nothing other than a platform to put one of these. That's what sat on top of there. It was the light inside the temple because there were no windows in the temple. This is all there was. Yes, I'll light it for you. I think I will. All right. And that's just olive oil that has been sucked up by a cotton wick. That's it. Until the Dark Ages, that's how the world was lit. Candles had a soft beginning. Beeswax was a hard thing to find. You hadn't had enough bees. You had to find the bees to get the wax and all that other stuff. And then they would burn bundles of sticks. I'm gonna tell you the word. It was a clump of them was called a faggot, and they would clump these things together. And you see them handing a fistful of brush. That's a light. There it is. How about the parable of the 10 virgins? Some of them had oil, some of them didn't. Hello. You're going to walk in darkness or you're going to walk in light. That's just how it is. This is how the world was illuminated all the way up to for the most part, in the Middle East, to the Far East, they got candles a little earlier. But I'm saying this is how this little piece of clay, not a hurricane lamp and turn that up from the 1900s. I'm talking this form of oil lamp was used all the way up to the 1500s. You're talking 3,500 years. That's how the world was lit up. Now listen. Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5:13. Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth." Wow. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It can't. It's no longer good for anything except you just throw it out and trample on it. How does salt lose its saltiness, by the way? Because I can pick up a piece of dried salt on the edge of the Dead Sea today, and it is terribly salty. Salt doesn't lose its flavor until it gets diluted in water. It loses its saltiness. There's salt in your water that comes out of your spigot at home. Saline, salt. There's salt in all of that. You're the salt of the earth. The enemy just wants to dilute you. You're diluted. You know how you can get the dilution out is you put it back up into the heat of the sun, and the sun pulls out the water, and the same amount of salt is left. If you have a saltwater pool in your yard, you should never have to ever add salt to it again. The only reason you have to add salt to it is because people get out of the pool and their water, and they take some of the salt with them when they go. But salt will stay. Salt does not evaporate. Pretty important when Jesus says, you are the salt of the earth. Don't get watered down or you'll be thrown out. Matthew 5, just the next verse, verse 14, he says, you are the light of the world. A city on a hill can't be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp like this and put it under a bowl. How foolish would that be? Because you light it so you can see. Instead, they put it on a stand so that it gives light to everyone in the house. He's saying, you are to be seen by other people. In that way, verse 16, you let your light shine before men so that they can actually see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Wow. So he said the entire Sermon on the Mount. We start with the Beatitudes, the entire Sermon on the Mount. And now fast forward to the end of the Sermon on the Mount in verse number 7. Check this out. Chapter 7, verse 28. When Jesus had finished these sayings, these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching. Why were they so amazed at his teaching? It's because he taught as one who had authority and not like their teachers. So, the red letter life principle here applies just as much today. These red letters apply just as much today as they did 2,000 years ago. It's the self-evaluation tool for you and for me. If you want to be an obedient apprentice, covers your words, your deeds, and your heart's condition, your thoughts. So here's the takeaway for you this morning. There's only one, and that is this, is I want you to embrace the apprentice lifestyle and renounce the world. Because if you're an apprentice to Mr. Smith on this job, you don't show up to Mr. Snow's job site and work with him. I'm an apprentice. And let me just digress here for a second because the word Christian is so watered down anymore. Because you're a Christian, you're a born-again Christian. What? There's only one kind of Christian, that's a Christian. Don't be qualifying what kind of Christian you are. I'm a Christian. That's like saying, well, there's Christians and there's born-again Christians. Well, there's Catholics and non-practicing Catholics. What the heck is a non-practicing Catholic? I don't even know what that is. It's like, I'm married, but I'm non-practicing married. That wouldn't go over real well with the wife, I don't think. Right? So if you're an apprentice with the master, you work with him. Which means you can't be out running around with the world. There was a monk back in the 5th century who had a monastery at the base of Mount Sinai in Egypt. Charles, the ladder, Ladder, ladder like a ladder that you climb, because he wrote about his monastery and the rungs of which the progression that an apprentice needed to take in order to be close to Jesus. And I have a photograph of that particular artwork that was drawn 6 centuries later. No, more than that. It was in the 1600s, the 15th century. So now we're talking 1,000 years after the man wrote this ladder an artist drew this, which is in St. Catherine's Monastery at the base of Mount Sinai, Egypt, today. That would be a bucket list trip, wouldn't it? Go to Egypt, go to St. Catherine's, walk in there and see this. What is this? It's called the Ladder of Divine Ascent. John Climacus was the monk who wrote it in 8600. But it wasn't until the 1600s that they actually painted a picture of it. So you have to understand the 15th century artistry of the time to appreciate the drawing or the painting. But let me explain it to. Did I put this in your notes too? Do you have this picture in your notes? Oh, you do. So good. I did so wonderful. So this is, in the lower right-hand corner, you see the saints. You see the saints who have gone before, who have ascended into relationship with the Lord, who are praying for these who are making journey towards Jesus in the monastery life. Up here you have angels that are praying for these people. But what's super interesting is, you see these demons? They're lassoing, they're grabbing people as they ascend in their relationship, their monastic relationship to the Lord. And they're dragging them down to the pit. And the man who wrote this said whenever he never ceased to amaze him who was named. What never ceased to amaze him was namely why some people still gave in to worldly passions when God himself, the angels of heaven, and all the saints before were encouraging them on towards Jesus. Wow. This guy's got it going on. And then as I studied this and I looked at this and I'm trying to figure out all of this and how it works together for us and what Jesus was trying to tell us in the Sermon on the Mount and where it all begins and your take home for the day, I said, you know what, it'd be interesting to know what those rungs on the ladder are. So you can do this. You can go home and you can research it yourself. But I'm going to save you the time. I'm going to tell you what the first step, the very first step is if you want to have a relationship with Jesus. You ready? A renunciation of the world. Embracing the apprenticeship lifestyle, and the renunciation of the world. In the world, not of it. A renunciation. You cannot have one foot in the world and one foot in the church and be happy in either place. In the world, you'll have just enough church in you, just enough Jesus in you to be miserable in the world when you're out getting stupid with your friends. So you can't be or you're in the church and you got enough of the world in you because you haven't renounced the world totally. You're working a dual apprenticeship on the DL. And you need to be sold out to the primary master builder. Hello? You can't be splitting. I can't be a non-practicing married person. Doesn't work that way. So you can't have it both ways. There are preachers that tell you you can. These are just principles for your best life today. Live your best life today. These are just good teaching principles. And the reason you're a Christian is because you want a good life, not to be saved from the flames of hell. I'm not some self-help guru. I'm not here to give you platitudes that make you feel good when you go home. I'm here to just prick your heart enough that you say, wait a second, there is a hell and I don't want to go there. So being a Christian may not be the easiest thing, but I'm going to be all in with the master builder and stop fooling around with the devil. Running with the devil. It's only going to get you busted. and disgusted in a world of hurt. Take it from somebody who's been there, done it, bought the t-shirt, and nearly died. So I have 3 verses for you to write down. Romans 12:2 says this: do not conform. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of the world. That is not a suggestion. It'd be nice if you kind of just tuck the world away far enough where no one else saw it in your life and run both sides. No. Are you an apprentice or aren't you? Are you going to do what he's doing on the job site, or are you going to go do your own thing? Are you going to climb the ladder? Well, the first step is turn your back on the world. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by how you think. How you think. Jesus is Lord. That's where you start. Jesus is Lord. And if Jesus is Lord, that means he's the boss. That means he's the master builder. If Jesus is Lord, do you rent? You have a landlord. What does that mean? They're the boss of your place, whether you like it or not. In the contract somewhere, they can come in when you're not there. It's really their place, not your place. You're renting it. I'm saying take ownership with your life with Jesus. It's not popular, I know. I'm so not sorry about that. Number 2, 1 John 2:15. Do not love the world. Do not love the world. Do not love the world. Or, just in case you're not clear, anything in the world. We clear? Because why? If anyone does love the world, then we know that the love of the Father is not in them. Not happy slappy, let's all have a better life and let's be Christians because that's going to mean a better life for us. No, listen, I've been reading since I brought my Fox's Book of Martyrs last week. I've been reading some of that stuff more. Listen, it's all going to go easy for you when you give your life to Christ. I don't think you know history. I don't think you know history. I was reading of a gentleman in France in 1547. His name escapes me right now. But he said that we don't need to pray to Mary or the saints. The Pope freaked out. The same day he said it, they hauled him in, convicted him on the spot, cut his head off that day, cut off his arms, tied a rope around his leg, and drug his body around the city in France for 3 days so everyone would know, don't cross the Pope. And the man who had his head cut off and his arms cut off loved Jesus. Loved Jesus. So yeah, your life can be sucky sometimes. You might even let me prepare you. You might even have to be burned at the stake. I know those little emails that your friends send about you because you're a Christian really hurt your feelings, but you could be burned at the stake. They could cut your head off. So are you all in or not? Do you want to be with the master or do you want to run with the devil? I don't know. Jesus changed it all. And in James chapter 4, verse number 4, he says, you adulterous people. Don't you, adulterous, what does that mean? Non-practicing married. Married to who? Jesus. Are we the bride of Christ? Did anybody else make that connection? Do I have to spoon feed you? No. There's some smart ones amongst you. I see you. No, because when I'm married to Christ, if I go work with another apprentice, I'm an adulterer. Metaphorically speaking, I'm no longer the bride of Christ. I'm screwing around on Jesus. And I come to church just so I can feel good. I'm a non-practicing Christian. You adulterous people, don't you know that friendship with the world is hatred towards God? Anyone who chooses to be a friend of the world. Oh, now, this is not good. Do you want to be on the winning side? Yep, okay. But if you choose friendship with the world, you are now an enemy of God. Listen, I don't want you to think I'm standing up here in some sort of self-righteous way telling you that it's easy and no. Jesus made it very clear. This is a hard life. You look at someone with lust in your heart, boom, guilty. So in the Old Testament, we could just keep a bunch of rules. Jesus now added our heart's attitude and our posture to that, which he doubled down and made it super impossible to keep it. All the more you should trust in the one who made a way for you where there seemed to be no way. A roadway in the desert, streams in the wilderness. Took every rough place and made it smooth. Every mountain that was exalted was brought low. Every valley brought up. He made the crooked place straight for you. But we live in this world. Step one on the ladder, renounce the world. What does that mean? Well, there's a system out there that says the only way you're going to be happy is if you make more money. The only way you're going to be happy is if you drive this car. The only way you're going to be happy is if you have a Gucci purse and not a Rue 21. Rue 21, is that the name of that place? You know what I'm talking about? Or the everything's $10 store. You know what I'm talking about? They both carry the same amount of money. You become a little more mature. And listen, I bought a Rolex once. It was from Mexico, but it was $25, yes. It's a Romex. It was $25, but you know what I'm saying. It's $25. And the first time I ever wore it to church is back in the day when I thought tambourines were okay. I was playing tambourine. At the end of worship, I looked at my watch, and the hands were just rolling around the bottom of the watch, right? But that's not it. But there's a little bit of maturity that says a Timex keeps the same time as a Rolex. There's a little bit but the world said, no, man. Unless you look like this, you dress like this, and you live in this type of place, and you drive, and you hang out with these types of people, you're just nothing. You're trash. You're no good. That's the world system. I'm encouraging you to have a biblical worldview. How about no longer we're called Christians? I'm down for a new noun. I'm down for a brand new noun. It's called this. I'm a biblical. I'm a biblical. You like that? We may go with that. I'm a biblical because Christian is just so like cold toast. You know? I'm a Christian. Well, yeah, so does all these other people call themselves Christian. They ain't no more than a Christian than a man in the moon, right? I'm a biblical. That'll start a conversation. I'm a biblical. I'm an apprentice of the master builder. You want to start a conversation? So what do? I'm an apprentice of the master builder. I'm a biblical. What? Pardon me? Squeeze me? But here's the issue. Genesis 4:7, we'll wrap this up. If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? The Lord says. But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must master it. So your takeaway, number one, recalibrate your life. That's one of the reasons I like going on mission trips, to be honest with you. This is not a mission sermon, but one of the reasons I like going to third world countries is I get immersed in a culture where there's no running water. I get immersed in a culture where you better not put any water that you find in your mouth. And you're lucky if it's a paved road. No one's got water in the house. You're washing your hands in a pila outside. Kids got one shirt with a Playboy bunny on it and a hole in the shoulder are happy because they have a shirt or shoes. That's the power of just recalibrating your life. Whatever you have to do to recalibrate your life, to get the world system over there and a biblical worldview back here, that's why it's important for us to know, I digress, but to know things like the geography. You just kind of immerse yourself there for a second. Okay, now I know, blah, 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 blah. That was actually one of the powerful things about ever going to Israel, if you ever have the chance to go there. It helps you a lot. And then I'd suggest to get rid of things that are pulling you away. I don't know what that is for you. I know what they are for me. That sin that so easily besets you. The word says, put that thing aside. Now, It may beset you, but not you. It may beset you, but not me. So don't walk my walk, and I won't tell you how to walk your walk, but the Bible is clear. You got something that pulls you away from Jesus, get rid of that. Well, my husband keeps me from Jesus. I'm going to get rid of him. No, 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 no. That's not how that works. Pastor said. No, I didn't. Well, Jesus just wants me to be happy. No. And then thirdly, I've already covered it, and that is see what Jesus is doing and do that. Get involved in what Jesus is doing. Embrace the apprentice lifestyle. Renounce the world. It's hard because it creeps back in every morning as soon as you open up your Facebook. I've actually deleted all of my social media off my phone for Lent. It may be permanent because I have so much more time on my hands now. No Instagram, no Facebook, bleep, bleep, bleep. Mindless scrolling, what's going on? I see stupid people everywhere, right? Doesn't mean that I've buried my head in the sand. I don't know what's going on in the world or what's happening in Congress or whatever's going on. I'm still aware of those things, because I think it's important that we're aware of that. But it just chews up time for me. And so I said, for Lent, which started 2 Wednesdays ago, I'm not going to have social media. Embracing the apprentice lifestyle, renouncing the world. Those things, you have something that just has a little hook in you and just ever so slightly is tugging you the wrong direction. Come over here and play. Like Hannah said with Davina. Well, I like listening to the serpent. He lets me do whatever I want. If I go play with this boss, I can work on the plumbing. I can do whatever I want. I can go whenever I want. But that house is going to fall. So that's it. I'm out of time. Had a great 2 months teaching you. I know teaching is a little different than preaching. I try to throw a little preaching in, and so study those things out. Enjoy that yourself. And why don't you stand with me, because I want to just finish up with a challenge for you to contemplate. Can you put the ladder back up for me, please, Rose? What would that artwork look like if it was drawn today? Think about that. I just reminded of an old song. Anybody remember the old song? We are climbing Jacob's ladder. Anybody remember that song? What a great old song. I don't know where you're at, but it doesn't seem the devil ever gives up. It'd be nice if all the demons were pulling you off down here, and then once you got here, whoo! Doesn't work that way. Sin is crouching at your door. And all he wants to do is kill, steal, and destroy. Sign up for an apprenticeship with the Master Builder. Heavenly Father, we bow our hearts this morning to thank you, first of all, for making a way to come to you, desperate in our sin and our brokenness, our horrific loneliness. No matter what our week was last week, as horrible as it might have been, we can still trust you. We can still hear your voice. We still know softly and tenderly that you're calling us to come be with you, to be your apprentice, to turn our back on the thing that drags us down and to move closer with you. Because that burden is easy. That yoke is light. So if you're moving through life and it's not easy and it's not light and you need hope and you hear a message of salt and light and you think that can never be me, the Lord is telling you now it can be. And anything that tells you different is a lie from the pit of hell. You can have joy even in the dungeon. You can have peace while even being crucified. Our Master Builder demonstrated it for us. It is possible with the help of the Holy Spirit. And so, should you be ready, whether you've served the Lord for a long time and something's crept in, or just time for a recalibration, or maybe today is the first day you're going to say, you know, I'm going all in. I'm not going to try to ride both sides of the fence anymore. I'm going to put all the chips across the table and put them all on Jesus. If that's you, just raise your hand with me. I'm all in. I want to be recalibrated. I don't want the world anymore. I don't want those demonic forces trying to drag me down. I need your help. I need your strength. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for these that are turning their life to you this morning. May we find you. Peace is a byproduct of you. Strength and all the things we desire are simply byproducts of knowing you. So, Lord, become real today in our hearts, our lives. Let us know without doubt that you suffered and died on the cross, but on the third day you rose again. The day that death died. Thank you. So we commit our lives to you now, to continue the ladder, to move along, knowing that the enemy will always try to pull us off. But now with our eyes focused, with our hearts recalibrated through the Sermon on the Mount, may we find that path a little more straight. So we thank you for your love, your passion towards us, and your patience with us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen and amen.